All right. Hello, folks. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Sophia Friesen. I manage research communications for University of Utah Health. And today we're going to be working through how to communicate research in an impactful way. We're specifically going to be focusing on creating an elevator pitch. A lot of this workshop will be geared towards researchers. If you're not a researcher, that is a-okay. Just letting you know. I am especially excited about this workshop because it is the first in a series. Um, we've got three more workshops coming up this summer. In June, Andrea Gallegos is going to be hosting a panel on using social media to share your research, along with Clement Chow, Brian Jones, and Kristen Kwan. Julie Kiefer in July will be discussing how to navigate interviews and talk about your work with the media. And in August, Kyle Wheeler is going to be talking about how to give a great presentation. So, all of these are strategies that you can use to better increase the impact of your research communications. But what do I even mean by impact? Because clear research communication can do a lot of things. And if you're watching this video, you're probably doing some of these things already. Good communication can help you get funding for your research. It can improve education for the community, help get you better collaborations with other researchers, potentially even lead to policies that support you and your work, and improve patient trust and agency, just depending on who you're talking to and what your research is about. So, hopefully, now that you're thinking about all of the amazing things that effective research communication can do for you, how are we going to do that today? In this workshop, you're going to practice some general strategies that'll help you communicate with non-expert audiences. You're also going to be working through a draft elevator pitch that is tailored to a communications goal that matters to you. I'd also like to leave you with some resources for further ways that you can continue leveling up your communications. We're making elevator pitches. What are those? Elevator pitches are short verbal presentations, think a minute or less, that are accessible to a non-expert audience. A good elevator pitch will make your audience want to keep listening to you. And if they stop listening to you, they'll still have the central takeaway of your research. So, as we're constructing these elevator pitches, we're going to do that by going through 5 steps. Setting a goal, defining your audience, determining why your work is relevant to that audience, streamlining down to minimal information, and organizing those basic elements into your story. So, let's talk about goal setting. What are you trying to do by communicating your science? As we've just talked about, effective research communication can do a ton of things. It can't do all of them at once. So the first step is to figure out what your goal is. Are you trying to start a dialogue? Are you trying to make someone believe something or feel something or do something? Um, and just something to note is that your communications goal is going to look pretty different from your research goal. Your research goal is what you're trying to accomplish with your research. Your communications goal is what you're trying to do by talking about your research. Um, we will be sharing these slides later, I see in the chat. Um, and when you're thinking about your goal, it helps to be really specific. Um, when you compare the goals, I want grant money versus I want the reviewers at the American Heart Association to believe that my research will advance heart health, the more specific goal is going to help you better focus your communication to get what you want. So let's do it. Please identify a communications goal that is relevant to you. You're all here for a reason, so I know you all have things you want to do by communicating. And post that goal in the chat. All right, we've got promoting UT Health San Antonio's research enterprise to a variety of audiences. Want to pass my dissertation defense, explain to friends and family, communicate to non-academic audiences, raise awareness of our organization, communicate the needs for research to the lay community, sharing the significance, explain why research matters. All right. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of great goals in here. I will say that a lot of what I'm seeing is not very specific. So when you're thinking about communicating your research to a general audience, that's going to encompass a lot of people. Um, and you'll have to think about like what is what's like the lowest amount of background that audience has, kind of thing. Help a member of the public understand how the basic research I do is connected to their health. Yeah. Um, so these are looking really good. We've got some statements on like convincing people to believe things. We've got information dispersal, essentially. Um, so yeah, that'll help you shape the rest of your elevator pitch. Um, Now that you have a goal, you know why you're talking. Um, Time to figure out who you're talking to. And I see a number of you are already thinking about this in the chat, and that's really important. Whether you're talking to patients or family members or research collaborators, uh, you want to figure out what your audience's level of background knowledge and what their priorities are. Um, and figuring out background knowledge can be pretty tricky if you're not as familiar with that audience, but there are a couple of strategies you can do to try and work on that. If you're lucky enough to be able to speak with your audience directly, you can ask them if they're familiar with a particular topic or concept. If you're not, it can be really, really helpful to use a proxy. Get feedback from somebody with a similar level of general knowledge as your audience. See how what you're saying goes across with them. Um, Something else that can be really valuable is looking at successful communications to that same audience. What knowledge do they assume and what do they lay out explicitly? All right. Um, so I think you probably know what I'm gonna ask you to do next. Um, And some of you have already gotten on this when you're talking about your goals. But name your audience and describe in just a couple of words what you think their approximate level of background knowledge is. For today, we're just going for an estimate. And once you have that, post it in the chat. Utah community member with a high school education. That is specific. I love it. High school education or less. All right. Undergrad honors students, potential industry partners, experts. Um, yeah. That could potentially encompass a big range there. K-12 students, that definitely encompasses a big range. Um, UU researchers who have heard that VA has interesting data and have heard that it's really hard to get credentialed to work with VA research. I love that. That is super specific. Um, Yeah, and many more. You all are narrowing in on who you're talking to. That is great. Okay. So, and I'm seeing like a wide variety of audiences here, which is great. Some expert, some community, patients, students, other researchers. All of those audiences you're gonna have really different communication styles for. Um, Great. So, we know who we're talking to and why we're talking to them. Why should they listen to us? Because even if you are able to communicate your work really clearly, if your audience zones out and does not listen to you, your message will not land, unfortunately. And this is going to look really different depending on your audience. That may feel a little bit abstract, so I'm going to run through a quick example. I come from a research background myself, and in my doctoral work, I studied tissue growth control in fruit flies. Throughout the course of those 6 years, I had to persuade a lot of different people that this was worth doing. And every time I did, it looked a little bit different. When I was speaking with scientists in my field, I would often talk about how my work was addressing this big gap in the literature and challenging prevailing models of tissue growth. These are gaps and models that researchers in my field were familiar with, so those reasons would land for them. When I was grant writing towards the American Heart Association, flies do have hearts, fun fact. Um, I would talk about how my work was going to answer these questions about signaling pathways and modes of growth that are actually really important during human heart development. And when I talked about my work to my sister, the relevance of that work is me. She cares about me as a human. So that's usually the angle I took. My research is going to help me get my PhD, and you care about me. But when I was trying to persuade her that my work was more broadly relevant, I would talk about the aspects of how animals grow that are shared all the way from flies to humans. Three audiences, three very different relevances. Now it's your turn. So take a few minutes to note down why your specific audience should listen to or read your pitch. You actually don't need to share it in the chat this time because you're about to pop into breakout rooms shortly after this. So you'll get a chance to talk with each other about your pitch. But if you have any questions while you're working through this, do feel free to post those. Do most people have more than one elevator pitch depending on the audience? Um, I would say that um, if you find yourself in a position where you're talking to more than one audience about your research, you should reconsider how you do your elevator pitch because that relevance is going to be different and that relevance is going to come first and center. Um, so yes, new audience, new story, even though you're communicating the same information. All right. Um, Time for our first round of peer feedback. You all are going to be popped into breakout rooms. Um, please share your goal, audience, and relevance with that breakout room partner. Um, and as you're listening to your partner's presentation, try and answer the following two questions. What level of background knowledge you think that audience has? And any other potential reasons their work may be relevant to that audience. You're going to have 5 minutes for this. I'll give you a warning when you are at the halfway point. All right. As folks are coming back in here, I hope that you all had a chance to talk through what you have so far, um, with your breakout room partner or partners. Um, we've figured out why you're talking, who you're talking to, why they're listening to you. It is time to streamline it down to minimal information. Um, this circle is your audience's life, which you know a little bit about because you've done your work to figure out what their background and their priorities are. And this is your research, which you also know a ton about. And that little purple intersection is what you probably want to tell them. You might notice that this is a really small intersection. That's deliberate, because less really is more when it comes to effective communication. Has anyone here ever been at a research seminar where the speaker tried to say too much, just like react, raise hand? Um, has anyone here ever been that speaker? I've been that speaker. Um, it's a really common problem and it's really hard to avoid. But there are some things that you can do to try and pare it down. Things that you can often try to take out. Troubleshooting or oftentimes anything related to the methods of your work. Sometimes that's relevant if you're talking with someone who wants to do the same thing that you did. Um, but a lot of the time it will not be. Also, reasons why your work is exciting to experts. Even if your research is transformational within its field, if you're talking with someone who is outside that field, that's not going to mean much, unfortunately. So you're going to have to figure out a different reason why it is important. And finally, last thing to think about taking out jargon, specialized language. This crops up a lot. If you use specialized language, you should at least define it, but it's usually better to take it out altogether. Um, think about given your communications goal, to achieve that goal, does your audience really need to know the specific name of the protein you study or the survey you used? Or is it possible to get the gist without that? Sometimes it's really awkward to try to do that, but a lot of the time you can take that out. So, the next thing I'm going to ask y'all to do is to start streamlining to those minimal details that you need. Write down about 3 to 5 bullet points that your audience needs to know for you to accomplish that communications goal. And be keeping in mind what they know already versus what you'll need to tell them, 'cause that'll depend on their background. Gonna take a couple minutes to do this one. Again, if you have any questions, go ahead and post them in the chat. This is hard to do, so we'll spend a little bit longer on it. Okay, how are we doing? Can I see a thumbs up react? People feeling okay? All right. There's like 2 folks with your video on. I see you. I see your thumbs up. I appreciate you. Okay. Um, let's roll. Um, At this point, we have all of the elements of an impactful general audience pitch. We have why it's relevant to them. We have the basic facts that they need to know to understand what you're trying to tell them. Let's see how that's organized into a story. And I like to bring this up because a lot of the time, communications towards general audiences versus scientific audiences are organized a little bit differently. And that's because with research papers, they're really written to be watertight. They're written for someone who's doing a close read of that, looking for holes and flaws. With a pitch, your main concern isn't that someone's going to see a gap in what you're saying, it's that they're going to get bored or not see the point. So pitches are constructed a little bit differently because you're optimizing them to be interesting. Um, and that leads to some differences in organization. If you think about a research paper, there's often a ton of supporting details in the introduction, and you go through those before you actually get to the results of what the team did, and maybe only zooming out to the bigger picture in the discussion. With a pitch, you almost want to flip that upside down. You want to tell people why they should care and what the main point is as soon as you can. Um, and then later fill in the gaps once you've already got them hooked. Um, and you can put either your relevance first or your main point first, just depending on uh, which is more compelling. It's kind of a judgment call based on that specific story. So I'll give you again just a few examples of what that can look like with either order. If you think sleeping it off might make things better in the morning, science has your back. This is a relevant statement. This is telling your audience, hey, here's something you've probably thought about. And this research directly connects to that. Here's something relatable to you. A new study published in XYZ shows that people wake up feeling their best in the morning and their worst in the evening. Okay, that's the big thing that the researchers found. So we've got relevance, then main point, then starting to fill in the details of what the actual data is. What about when it's the other way around? Main point first. A common chemical in household plastics has been linked with heart disease deaths. There you go. That's the big finding. And then it starts getting into about 13.5% of the more than 2.6 million deaths from cardiovascular disease among a certain population. That is a relevant statement. That is saying, hey, this is something that's really common, actually. This is something that maybe affects you, that maybe affects people you care about. Relevance versus your main point can actually go either way. Um, all right, it is time for you all to take a stab at this. Um, Hopefully at this point you have your bullet points, you have your audience-specific relevance. I'm going to ask that you shuffle those up. Into about a 1 minute verbal thing. It's gonna be rough. It's not gonna have great transitions. That's fine. You're just building the bones of it out right now by getting that relevance and those main points into order. Um, and after you do that, we're going to be throwing you into those same breakout rooms again. So get ready, steel yourselves. Okay. Um, I'm gonna get y'all into breakout rooms again in just a hot second. Um, you're gonna have about 5 minutes total. Uh, go through that pitch to your breakout room partner. And as you listen to your partner's pitch, I'd like you to think about these three questions. What's your one sentence takeaway from that pitch? What's one thing that was confusing? And what's one thing that you want to know more about? All right. And everybody is coming back in. Fantastic. Okay. All right. So, by this point, I am very proud of all of you for sticking around and going through these steps to put together your elevator pitch. Hopefully, this is a general strategy that you can use for a lot of different communication formats. And I would like to encourage all of you to get out there and go use it. It's a really important time, I think, for people to be talking about research. And there are a ton of different opportunities for you to do it, whether it's talking with friends and family or using social media, or writing for online science news outlets. There are a ton of different ways for you to spread your great work and the importance of it. And of course, that includes buffing up your skills using some of the future workshops. Um, I'm really excited for the social media workshop in June. The interacting with the media, navigating interviews workshop in July, and the presentations workshop in August. If any of those are of interest, I really hope to see y'all there. Um, I'm not going to spend a lot of time specifically talking through these resources because y'all are going to have access to a recording. Oh, yeah, thanks. The link for the workshop series is posted in the chat. Um, and with that, I'd just like to open it up to any questions. You're welcome to either post in the chat or raise your hand.